Somewhere near you, there is a graveyard. Maybe you drive past it on the way to work. You probably don't think much about it, but the idea that a dead human body deserves a specific place, a ritual, a farewell, that idea had to come from somewhere. When a wolf dies, the pack moves on. When a fish dies, it sinks. Death in nature is not an event. It's just a transition of matter. But somewhere in human prehistory, one of your ancestors looked at a body and felt something no other animal had ever felt before. They couldn't leave. They didn't know why. They just knew they had to do something. What happened next didn't just shape how we handle death. It may have created everything we call civilization. In 2013, researchers working in a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star made one of the most controversial discoveries in paleoanthropology. Deep inside, in a chamber so narrow only the smallest team members could squeeze through, they found hundreds of bones belonging to at least 15 individuals of a species called Homo naledi, a primitive hominin with a brain closer in size to an ape than to ours. And yet, those bones were deliberately placed there. No predator marks, no flooding. Someone had carried those bodies through hundreds of feet of winding underground passage and left them there with intention. The scientific community pushed back. They said Homo naledi's brain was too small for symbolic thought. But here's the problem. We've been wrong about this exact thing before. For decades, the textbook answer was that Neanderthals didn't bury their dead. They were considered too primitive, too animal. Then the evidence started piling up in the opposite direction. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal skeleton was found carefully placed on its side, knees drawn up, with pollen suggesting flowers had been laid nearby. At La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, a Neanderthal was placed deliberately in a pit with animal bones arranged around it. Site after site showed the same pattern. Intentional placement and objects left with the dead. A species that went extinct 40,000 years ago was burying their dead with something that looks uncomfortably like grief. Which raises a question nobody has cleanly answered. What is the evolutionary purpose of caring about a dead body? Every hour spent near a corpse in the ancient world was an hour of risk, disease, predators, and time taken from finding food and surviving. And yet, humans didn't just leave their dead. They stayed. They marked the spot. They came back. Something in the human brain decided that death was not the end of the relationship. And that decision changed everything. When researchers study modern hunter-gatherer groups, death is never a private event. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the oldest living cultures on Earth, when someone dies, the entire camp responds with collective wailing. It is not performed, it is uncontrollable, full-body grief that spreads through the group like a wave. Every human culture ever documented has some form of this. In evolutionary biology, when a behavior appears in every human population on Earth, it usually means it was selected for. The groups that did it survived better than the groups that didn't. A 2017 study found that going through intense collective emotion, the kind triggered by funerals and mourning, measurably increased cooperation between group members in the weeks afterward. Grief is social glue. When you cry next to someone, your nervous systems synchronize. You become, in a measurable neurological sense, more bonded. Death, of all things, may have taught humans how to stay together. But the story doesn't stop there. At some point, humans stopped just disposing of their dead and started doing something else. They started telling stories about where the dead had gone. Red ochre at burial sites going back 100,000 years tells us this. Nobody painted a body red because it was practical. It meant they believed the color meant something. Life, fire, the possibility of return. The moment a human looks at a dead body and thinks not just, "This person is gone," but "This person went somewhere," everything changes. That thought is the seed of every religion that has ever existed. Every afterlife, every prayer, every church, mosque, and temple ever built grew out of that first impossible question asked in the dark next to a body that used to be someone. Where did they go? That question could only be asked by a brain capable of imagining things that aren't present. A chimpanzee can use tools, a crow can solve puzzles, but none of them appear to sit with a dead companion and wonder where that individual's experience went. The moment humans started doing that, they crossed a line no other species has ever crossed. Death became a question, and questions demand answers. So humans invented spirits, ancestors who watched over the living, and worlds beyond this one. In inventing all of that, they created the framework that would eventually become philosophy, theology, art, and science. All of it is rooted in that original moment. Someone died, and someone else couldn't accept that they were simply gone. We did not become human when we made tools. We did not become human when we learned to cook food or cross oceans. We became human the first time one of us looked at a body and refused to believe that was the whole story.